All right. Thanks to everyone who's tuning in on the Long Beach API Facebook. Welcome. Happy Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. My name is Mike Guardabascio. I'm a journalist here in Long Beach, sports writer and education reporter with the 562.org and the Long Beach Post. I'm very honored that Long Beach API has asked me to help moderate this conversation with API advocates here in the city of Long Beach. There's just a great group of people we have lined up. I'm really excited that everyone could be here with us. So we also want your questions. Be sure to post questions on the Facebook. Those will be made available so that I can ask them to our panel. And yeah, if you haven't shared it yet, share this from the Facebook page so that your friends know that it's going on and they can join us as well. And with that, as I said, we've got a great group. I'm really excited to have everyone here. If everyone could just sort of go down the list, introduce yourself to the audience and mention the group that you're working with and what the work you guys focus on is, and let them know who you are. I think we'll start with Ladine.
My name's Ladine Chan. I'm the program coordinator for EM3 Educated Men with Beautiful Messages. And we're a youth program at St. Mary Medical Center, also with Families of Good Health. We work with youth ages 14, 19 years old, really focusing on leadership development, community organizing, and life skills. So some of the services that we provide for our youth are mentorship, community engagement, college readiness, and career exploration.
Okay, next up, Tavae.
Hi, everyone. My name is Samuelu, she, her pronouns. I have the honor, exhaustion, and privilege of being the executive director of Empowering Pacific Islander Communities, also known as EPIC. We are a national organization that's based in LA. I'm zooming to you from Long Beach. As an organization, our mission is really focused on advancing social justice, and we do that by engaging Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders in culture-centered advocacy, leadership development, and research. And I also really need to acknowledge that a lot of what EPIC's able to do and I'm able to do in my work are because of elders like Dr. Thompson, who you'll also be meeting later. So thank you.
Okay, Alex, just continuing down the list.
Yes, magandang hapon po. My name is Alex Montances. I'm a community organizer with the Filipino Migrant Center, which is based in West Long Beach, but serves just a larger LA area. And our mission is really to educate, organize, and mobilize the Filipino immigrant community, workers, youth, and families for their rights and welfare. And so we do a lot of immigrant and workers' rights work, as well as even working with seniors around health, even and especially at this time during COVID-19. So maraming salamat po. Thank you.
Okay, Frederick.
Hello, everybody. My name is Frederick Soar from the Khmer Alumni Association. I'm the events coordinator, just one of the team players on the leadership team. Our goal is to promote the empowerment, the success, and the sustained engagement of alumni and Khmer student organizations and professionals within the Cambodian American community. We do that by networking, by student involvement, and by supporting the community in general. Yes.
Okay, and Ms. Hopson?
Hello, everyone. My name is Chan Hopson. I'm the Executive Director of the Khmer Parent Association in the 6th District. Our office is located in the 6th District. Our mission is to provide, to produce tomorrow leader out of today Khmer youth through higher education, leadership development, annual scholarship, health education to women and family, empowerment and advocacy for youth and the community in Long Beach.
That's great. Thank you. Moni?
My name is Moni Pili, and I am with Gafa, which is an acronym that stands for Leadership and Education through Ngangana Samoa, the Samoan language. And basically our mission is really to just preserve and evolve, sustain the Samoan language and culture within the diaspora, and to empower the Samoan and other Pacific Island diaspora communities by promoting leadership and education so that they can strengthen and become advocates within their own respective communities. Again, I also would like to add that our work is very much inspired and empowered by EPIC through Tavae, and of course, Empine through Dr. Victor Thompson, which you will of course be introduced to later.
Dr. Thompson, you've got fans among the panel even, so go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Yep, aloha talofa. Great to see all of you. And my name is Dr. Victor Thompson, and I'm a native of Long Beach. But our mission is to support Pacific Islander students in achieving their academic goals, also to help our parents, community, and educators in how they can best support their students. So pleasure to be with all of you.
Okay, and May?
Hi there, this is May Lee, and it's great to be here with all of you. I am a journalist, a broadcast journalist, have been doing this work for about 30 years, have worked for different networks like CNN, CNBC, ABC, worked for Oprah for a little while. And now I have my own show called The May Lee Show, which is a podcast in audio and video form. And the focus of the show is really all things Asian and Asian American. We do interviews and we talk about issues that our community cares about. But also right now, of course, the show is focusing a lot on the issue at hand, which is COVID-19 and the xenophobia that has unfortunately sprouted up from what's happened in this crisis. So it's a really important time for our community. So I definitely use my platform in the media to hopefully elevate our Asian voices throughout the US and around the world.
That's great. And Susana?
So welcome everyone. My name is Susana Sngiem. I'm the Executive Director of United Cambodian Community, and our mission is to elevate the Cambodian community through local engagement and leadership that embodies Cambodian cultural values. And the way that we do that is we really invest our programs and our services in health equity work, youth enrichment, community integration, and also economic integration.
Okay, well, if you've tuned in and you're, it looks like Suli is here as well. So Suli, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having APIA Professional Network on. So APIA is Asian Pacific Islander American Professional Network, which was formed in 2016 to build a strong and sustainable network of APIA's professionals to contribute to the social, economic, and civic advancement in Long Beach. And some of the things that we do is that we cultivate, coordinate, and empower Asian Pacific Islander American professionals through leadership and professional development, education, and community services, as well as advocacy.
Okay, that is wonderful. So if you tune in and you've heard the introductions, you can see why I was so excited about this group of people. I think, first of all, just listening to everyone talk a little bit about what you do here in the city or what you're doing professionally. Something that Nok, who helped organize the event, has really stressed to me is an important storyline for her through this API Heritage Month is what an incredible diversity of experiences and backgrounds within this group and within the API community in the city and obviously across the country. One thing that we're obviously all facing in different ways, but that we all have to deal with is this COVID-19 and the associated shutdowns, as well as Mei Lee mentioned, unfortunately, a kind of an increase in this country of xenophobia. So if everyone could just kind of share, how is your organization dealing with the shutdown and the challenges that's causing, as well as are your members experiencing more issues with xenophobia or racism, and how are you kind of supporting them through that? So Suli, if you could start actually, and then we'll go kind of in order that we did the introductions in after that.
So certainly COVID-19's impacted all of us. There's nobody that's not been impacted. And I think that as a professional network, based on certain sector, it's harder hit than others. Our membership has not been as active this year, so we have not been able to personally meet and be in touch. But certainly there's been a lot of conversation about how do we continue to voice against the xenophobia that's been happening and the scapegoating about this. So as an advocacy group, we're supportive of other efforts that everybody's been doing. And that's been the role that we have been played, is making sure that we are part of that collective advocacy in stopping the anti-racism, the scapegoating of who's causing and to blame and pointing fingers, right? So so that's what we've been able to join in efforts of supporting our brothers and sisters.
Great, Ladine?
Oh yeah, I guess for our youth program, we were meeting regularly every Friday at St. Mary Medical Center. And so because of COVID, we have to work remotely and meet with our youth virtually, actually. So for us is really educating our youth about COVID. I know there's a lot of different myth that's going on in social media, so really educating them on it, and also being able to practice self-care. I know many of the youth are dealing with some anxiety, uncertainty, so definitely making sure that we want to practice self-care, maybe some different breathing technique, different avenue for them to really keep their mind grounded and moving forward as well.
Tavae?
Yeah, I think the thing about COVID-19 and really any pandemic or situation is that it exacerbates a lot of inequity or inequality that already existed in our society. So if you think about Pacific Islanders who are, a vast majority living a low income or below or at poverty level, a pandemic is going to make the situation worse. When I think specifically about EPIC, it's that we were working on a census, trying to ensure that everybody had a full count, and so much of our outreach was really relying on being able to talk to people in person. So I think the most recent data that came out in April that's disaggregated, that shows race and ethnicity, also shows that Pacific Islanders are being infected and dying at a rate twice as high as any other racial or ethnic group. And so on this dual front of needing the census because terms like disproportionate or inequitable mean nothing without census data, but also recognizing that our communities are really finding it hard to survive right now. So many of the recommendations that are considered best practices, right? How do you social distance in multi-generational households that have 10 to 14 people in them? Places like churches where people go to get all of their needs met are now no longer able to gather. And so as an organization that's culture-centered, we also recognize that our tried and true strategies for helping to meet the needs of our community are considered dangerous right now. So what can we offer up as an alternative? So we talk about mutual aid strategies. We have partners, our census work actually moved to phone banking along with groups like Gafa and the NHPI Alliance. There are groups like Couture and Chamorro Foundation who have integrated census messaging into their cultural programming. So where people go to find healing, how do we integrate census and all of the work that we're doing into the basic needs? So if people are trying to find groceries or trying to find jobs, how do we not try to shove our advocacy work at them, but meet them where they're at? And so I think that's been the biggest thing. And also to acknowledge that many of our organizations, especially in the Long Beach and LA County area, are completely volunteer run. I have the privilege of being paid to do this work. This is what most of my waking hours are, but what does it mean that the same people who are trying to make sure you get counted, trying to make sure that you vote in November, and are also trying to make sure our community survive, are all doing that? And I think the demand is far higher than our bandwidth.
I think that's very well said. That is a good summation of all of the different angles that are affecting some of the communities here in the city. Alex, do you want to talk a little bit about what you guys are facing?
Yeah, I mean, I think COVID-19 has had a big impact on the Filipino community, like many communities. As you know, you go to any hospital in Long Beach, you'll find Filipino nurses and healthcare workers at the front lines, treating patients of COVID-19, but also other essential workers like Filipino caregivers, the janitors, people who are working in a lot of these major industries who are still going to work and, have been infected or have also been exposed to COVID-19. But I think similar to the other organizations here, the solution has been community organizing. So FMC has been partnering with a lot of different folks in the Filipino community in Long Beach. And we created something called Bayanihan, community response. And so it's a whole bunch of volunteers who are coming together, serving the Filipino community. And so we're doing grocery drop-offs, working with Filipino grocery stores, or even Filipino restaurants like Bebot Filipino American Soul Food that have been providing hot meals to our community members, and even Zoom webinars on like mental health and other things that are affecting the Filipino community. So, if our current healthcare system or government isn't providing for the people, it's really our community that also has to provide for itself.
Frederick?
When it comes to the Khmer Alumni Association, what I want to say first is COVID-19, for a fact, affects everybody, physically, mentally, emotionally, even us leaders and all the volunteers with KAA. However, it doesn't change the goals. Us as leaders, even though we had to take a step back, we had to work from home, we had to slow things down and really, look at what's in front of us. The back end work is what really became important. So our scholarship programs, our mentorship programs, that all had to get beefed up. All of our online forms, we had to work on those. So that type of work didn't stop. The volunteers, our leaders, there's only a few of us. We don't get paid to do this, but we do it anyways. We all had to, slow down for a bit, but we still want to do this because a recent story, one of our mentees that was part of our mentorship program recently told me that he got accepted to grad school thanks to our mentorship program. And that addresses some of the educational gaps that get even wider thanks to this COVID-19 due to lack of technology and lack of, representation for Cambodians. So even with all the hardships, KA is still working hard, especially in the back end, to address these educational gaps. Yes.
That's great. Chan?
Yeah, during the COVID-19, it's just very hard because the Cambodian community have history. 45 years ago, they've gone through the Cambodian genocide. So this isolation and the school shutdown and everything bring back the memory, especially for the senior. So KPA worked very hard to work as a team with UCAP as the United Khmer American Coalition under the leadership of Mr. Thompson to get the food, the grocery to provide to the isolated senior. And also I work in a collaboration with the AOC7 under the leadership of the Mary Simon, the neighborhood group with the Cambodian town with the 6th district office to provide the grocery to the family, especially the single mother and single father that have the small children and lose the job to help them temporary. So lately, with a partnership with the AOC7 again, we received a grant of $5,000 from a Marathon Petroleum to provide the gift card of $150 each family, very diverse family who live in the central area. So for Cambodian, KPA select the very needy 7 family to get a $150 gift card for each, and then another additional 9 family to get a grocery for their family. And as you know, that when the school shut down, the parent have another burden on top of it because they never been trained as a teacher how to deal with the children that stay home and then doing with the education. This is very stressful for them, and KPA have a constant communication with the parent and to ask how they doing, and also to give them some tip or something that they had to encourage the children to work together, not as a learning, the schoolwork or the math or the reading or writing, but working as a family, like what do you find around the house that connected with the ABC or with the Khmer language, because I have the Khmer tutoring class every Thursday at the Whittier Elementary School. So I keep encouraging the family to work together either in cooking or doing the playing game or identify something that they can connect it with learning. So far, I get the very good result from the parents and back to me that the kids learn how to love how to learn what they doing, like what they learning, and they writing the story to me. They writing something. They took the picture. What they doing, either to go outside to clean up around the house, clean the front yard, or doing some cooking inside the kitchen with the mother, or going jogging. So all those they report back to me by sending me what they have done by writing like a 2 or 3 sentences to me. In order to help them to cope with this anxiety and the stress that they're dealing with the school shutdown, KPA in a partnership with Dr. Natalie Tran, the Executive Director of the National Resource Center for Asian Language and Cascade Fullerton, to put on the webinar series that the very first one started this Friday, May 29 from 6 to 7, to talk to them how the COVID-19 affect you and your family. So this way, so we identify what can we do to help them more, how can we be the solution to alleviate all the stress and the burden they have it during the time that the COVID-19 and the school shutdown. And on top of it, there is a lot of seniors that still have a lot of issue in going to see the doctor when they have the illness or they have the injury. So I still serve them through the telephone, the interpretation service that navigate them, call follow up to them, and either for the after the doctor visit, and also in the medication management, do they take the medication in the right way, the way the doctor prescribe and instruct them. And this is help them to like sustain their life and to like hang in there and deal with the COVID-19 right now. It's just very hard for them, but we do our best to be with them and to embrace them and provide the loving service the best we can.
Absolutely. Moni?
Thank you. Well, COVID-19, it's obvious, has impacted everyone on this panel in their respective organizations. For Lengafa, we basically we're just a bunch of board members who came together, and we are all involved in a lot of advocacy work under EPIC, under NPINE, under PIP, Pacific Island Health Partnership, and a plethora of others. We came together and we saw that there's a lot of disparities that we have to address and spread awareness of. And we realized that there was a component missing in our diaspora. That's a lot of Pacific Islanders, specifically Samoans here, which many are concentrated in the Long Beach, South Bay, LA County, Orange County area. up north to the Bay Area in San Francisco, and then all over. But basically here where we're stationed, we thought that we should bring a cultural approach to address these issues. I mean, our culture in our small, tiny group of islands in the South Pacific survived imperialism, colonialism, 2 world wars, and in 2019, we're still here and we still have a place to call home, our beautiful islands on the other side of paradise. But the reality is, statistics shows that the majority of Samoans, Tongans, Native Hawaiians, or those who identify as such, all were born here in the continental US. And so there was that gap of identity, of knowing where you came from and the rich culture that you are a part of. And we figured if we took a cultural approach in teaching Samoan language and culture, they can create a pathway to be a more productive member of society through civic engagement, if you know who you are. When COVID-19 happened, before that, we were holding classes, we were holding classes on the UCLA Harvard campus in correlation with the Linguist Institute. And because of COVID-19, because of the stay-home orders, and because we had to do our part to, flatten the curve and promote the well-being of our students and our members, we decided to not hold our classes. We never ventured into online learning, but that took us out of our comfort zone, and we decided to go into territory that we had no experience in. A lot of us are tech savvy, but we never took our curriculum and our program and streamlined it online. And COVID-19 helped us come out of that shell and reminded us, that our Pacific Islander heritage ancestors are navigators. So we explored the ocean by reading the stars, and now we find ourselves navigating through a territory and through a platform that we had no knowledge of, and it turned out to be a really great success. But COVID-19, that's what happened to us. That's what helped us push us out to reach as many people. We only had students in the South Bay Area, in LA County, Orange County, and because of the online platform, we had students from New Zealand, Colorado, Seattle, Utah, Arizona, Hawaii. But COVID-19 also highlighted, as Tavae expressed, something that was already there, and it already exacerbated, the disparities that we already face. We are dying at a higher rate, and many of our board members come from other advocacies, and accumulatively, we've been advocating to disaggregate our data so that we can look at a glimpse of the reality that we're actually facing. And when I say disaggregate our data, that means to take away our numbers of just Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders, because the reality is we are one of the poorest in the income bracket. We mostly live in low income housing. We are one of the most unhealthiest demographics in the area. We also are one of the fastest growing demographics in prison. These advocacy works through EPIC and through NPINE and through PIP, and it also inspires through Lingafa. We wanted to tackle these disparities, and through COVID-19 and what's happening with the pandemic, it really did shine a light on those disparities as far as getting data and getting resources. Honestly, after having a talk with one of the directors of the Department of Health, we had to literally beg and fight for statistics, but because our numbers are so small, they didn't think it was relevant. And we basically at one point said, we're not gonna have any. Thankfully, through the advocacies and through the work of so many people who are fighting for that data in correlation with civic leaders, we are slowly but surely getting that information. And when that information does come, we're appalled at the numbers of our Pacific Islander demographics here. I also want to shed a light on the narrative, because we were scolded on being more responsible in our communities by practicing safe distancing and wearing masks and whatnot and staying home. as Tavae said, we're multi-generational households. We're also multi-family households. 30% of NHPI communities here are essential workers in the healthcare industry, security workers, at the warehouse, at the grocery store. Many of us on this panel are essential workers ourselves. And so, I think it's really important that we overcome these false narratives because we are doing the best we can, but information and data is important. And so, yeah, COVID-19 is impacting a lot of us, especially our API community here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Just a quick note of explanation. We're having a little bit of bandwidth issues with Dr. Thompson. So Dr. Thompson, we may just have you on audio if the video is not working, but can you share a little bit?
Yes, thank you very much. And I wanted to thank my colleagues, Moni and Tavae, but also thank all of you for all of your work with our communities, and in particular with the schools. So I want to report that NPINE has been working very hard to support our students. And one thing we're doing is we are still continuing with our scholarship award presentation. We'll do this virtually, but we've still had a scholarship, so we're very happy for that. I also wanted to commend all of our school districts because it sure wasn't easy converting to distance learning. And just want to thank our teachers, our students, our parents, and everyone for supporting all of our schools. Because I know I've been teaching online for over 10 years and it's not the best. But I think the biggest thing that NPINE's been working on has been to support our students in the areas of anxiety and stress, social and emotional needs, and also working with our teachers, counselors, administrators, and others, including parents. So 3 days a week, we have something that we call a Aloha music. We talk story, we do mindfulness, we reflect on things, and on occasion we also take our music to virtually to some of the school districts. We were at Centennial High School in Compton the other day, and we should continue to do our best to be positive. But thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Thanks for bearing with us with those technical issues. Susana, if you don't mind sharing a little bit, and then May, I'd like to kind of have a little bit of a back and forth with you about some of these issues since you've spent so much time reporting on them. Susana?
Great, thank you. I just want to echo what everybody has shared on the panel already, and also just share the image that one of my friend brought up in terms of COVID-19 is a storm that we are all experiencing, but we're all in different boats. And so very much like our communities and what everybody has already shared already, that there's different disparities that are exacerbated during COVID-19. One of the biggest disparities that really comes to light with communities of color is the digital divide that's in our community. So a lot of times these COVID-19 resources are all being shared and updates through online resources, through Facebook, and that's where a lot of our community members just don't have internet access, or also they just do not have the digital literacy to navigate these resources. So that has been a huge priority for UCC, is being able to build the capacity of our organization, but also our community members to be able to access updated resources and make sure that there's language access when it comes to these emergency funds and resources. The other piece that we're focused on is that within the Cambodian community, there are high rates of chronic health conditions. So in our older adults, 50% of them have 5 or more chronic health conditions. And so that means a lot of them are part of the vulnerable population that are at risk of being affected by COVID-19. And so for us, we really want to protect this population and provide as many resources as we can, but also recognize that a lot of their ways that they feel better and are heal and are healthy are through social activities, which are something that we cannot do during COVID-19. So trying to think of creative ways that folks can still connect with one another while being physically distant with one another. So we've hosted conference calls, because even Zoom calls can be very challenging. And so conference calls so that they can at least hear from each other. We're doing Facebook Live events and trying to post things on YouTube, encouraging folks to continue to do Khmer karaoke and dancing where they're able to still celebrate and be able to do these healing practices that are part of our cultural practices, and gardening is another key piece that our community members do. So encourage them to take pictures of their gardens and share their gardening plants with us so that they continue to practice these healing practices.
Well, I'm hearing, not to my surprise at all, I'm hearing a lot of really innovative strategies to deal with a really wide array of challenges, obviously. And I mean, I think you guys have, just as a journalist listening to the group, it's like you've got a good 2 years worth of reporting to do just on some of the issues that you guys have brought up, right? May, I wanted to ask you, I mean, I think our panelists have kind of shared some of what they're experiencing in the city and what their communities are. You mentioned you've been doing a lot of reporting with your podcast and the other broadcast work you've done on specifically those issues around xenophobia that so many in the API community have kind of experienced. Can you share a little bit about what you've been hearing and your thoughts on that?
Well, this is a story that we've been covering since February, actually, when the crisis started to slowly escalate. In the beginning, people were unsure about what was happening. And then we started, unfortunately, hearing more and more stories about assaults against Asians here in the States, but also worldwide. So this wasn't just an American problem, it's a global problem. And so in my show, my partner is Neckshark, which is the leading Asian American news source online. And so we both, as kind of a tag team effort, have been trying to cover these stories. And I've got to tell you, it's been overwhelming. It's been daily. We hear about these horrible incidents, either verbal assaults or physical assaults, people being threatened. We just heard about a woman in San Francisco who was stuffing hate mail into Asian American homes, their mailboxes, and she was arrested and then let go immediately with no fine. So, we have to really start defining hate crimes. And, Asian Americans, I think, are saying enough. In the past, I think Asians have been seen as docile, don't want to get involved, don't want to make any waves, all of that. That's sort of the stereotype that has hurt us. But what I'm seeing now is a greater movement within the community of saying enough. And they're speaking up, they're speaking out, they're organizing. They're certainly using social media and other platforms to talk about these incidents very openly. And so that is helping galvanize the community, but also galvanize allies, because really communities of color all have to work together. This is not a separate issue. Racism affects so many different communities. And so what I've seen through doing the show and talking to viewers and listeners is that there is this desire to want to work together as a greater community in terms of fighting against racism, right? This is an ugly thing. We see this happen every day. We saw what happened in Central Park in New York City. We saw what happened in Minnesota. An African man was killed by police again. So this is a problem that is pervasive. And the more we speak up about it, the more we educate and inform, I think that's the way we're gonna be able to battle this to a certain extent. But unfortunately, it's a daily occurrence.
I'm going to come back to the point that you made about different communities working together, because I think that's what I'd like to ask the panel about next. But, first, you've got sort of I think all of us here, the rest of us in the panel are working mostly in the city of Long Beach or in the South Bay or in a very specific community. You've got sort of more of a global sense of everything that's going on, as you said, from how much time you spent working on this. What advice do you have for kind of anyone, to be honest? What advice do you have for someone who's experiencing this kind of racism, for how they can reach out and connect to people who can help them tell that story or give them help? What advice you have for our panelists who are working with, obviously, groups of people about how to make sure that they're monitoring and hearing from people? What advice do you have for police departments, about the way that they can try and be proactive about preventing these kinds of issues? What are your thoughts for a specific community from your sort of more global perspective?
Well, I'll preface what I'm going to say by saying I'm no expert. So, but as a journalist, obviously, I hear a lot of different stories from different sources. And I'll tell you on a personal, from a personal perspective, it's heartbreaking when people write to me telling me their own stories about a recent assault or some sort of racism that they've experienced, and the fear. And that's what's so awful, is that I think as Asian Americans, APIs, we all are a little nervous, right? We all are a little fearful about what could potentially happen because we know that this is happening out there. So first and foremost, I've had security experts tell me that you just have to be more vigilant, unfortunately, because of the environment that we're living in right now. So trying to be more vigilant, trying to be a little bit more aware. If you see something, say something, because this is what I see in the stories that I hear about, that there are a lot more good people than there are bad people. And a lot of these incidents, when there are other people around, it warms my heart to see that at least people around the person who's been victimized, they will say something. They will say, hey, no, that's not right. Stop that. So, again, this is the whole idea of allies, right? Allies can come in the form of definitely organizations, right? Legitimate organizations, but allies also can come in the form of the person next to you, on the subway or walking down the sidewalk. So, just keep in mind that you can't just be silent. You have to say something. You have to, if you see something that's going, horribly wrong, do what's right, right? We have to fight evil with good. And I know that sounds really hokey, but it's true, because there's so much of this hatred going on. We have to push back on it somehow. And for organizations, all the organizations that are represented here today, I think, are doing incredible work because they are doing something that matters. They're doing it because they're passionate about it. They're doing it because they're compassionate people that want to make a positive difference in their own communities, as well as educating the broader community. And that's what it's going to take.
I think that's very well said. One thing that Nak, who helped put this event together and has been working a lot with the Long Beach API, one thing she mentioned to me was that support network for a lot of people disappeared because of the way that the shutdowns happened. I think in Long Beach, we have a growing group of educators and administrators from the API community, Nak included. And she said, she feels stressed on a daily basis as she's reading these reports of increased xenophobia and racism, that her students that maybe she knows, okay, she's someone they really trust, or there's someone on their campus, a coach or a teacher, if, whether you're Polynesian or Cambodian or anything else, you've lost that contact with that person because you don't see them anymore, right? You're at home, maybe you're going to a grocery store to get something for your parents or your grandparents. And so I think that was one of the reasons I think she wanted to have this live chat with the API advocates from so many different groups in Long Beach. And so I'm going to turn this back to our panel a little bit. One of Knox's questions that I think she really wanted us to talk about is, what can all of the different groups in Long Beach do to do what May's been talking about and kind of build the bridges between these different groups so that, as May said, everyone, if one person's experiencing racism, everyone is, right? How do we do that? How do we start bringing our groups more together and to kind of build a little bit more connectivity? It's Suli, can we start with you?
Yes. So there's so much just wrapped up in our conversation, from how are we dealing with COVID-19 to racism and, you know, the impacts of it. And, you know, what APIA Professional Network does is really, how are we addressing underrepresentation? How are we ensuring that and what we do is, how are we making sure that those who are professional are in certain industry where, hey, I'm the only person that's, you know, Samoan, or I'm the only one that's Cambodian, right? So it's about, how do we ensure that we're educating those who are in school, the variety of industry they can get into, and having that representation, which means your coworker is more likely to know what Cambodian food is like, or what, you know, certain holidays that are practiced by, you know, Samoans, and, you know, cultural things that, you know, Filipino community conducts. And so that's kind of where the firsthand experience occurs, relationships that are built through connection. And I feel that it doesn't help too that we're in a current state where we have federal administrators that are encouraging hate, that are creating division, right? So it comes from the top down. And I think, unfortunately, it's up to us who are working locally with community members themselves, and how do we not just work with those who are being victims, but how are we working with those who are contributing to it in ways and where we're having dialogues. And I think that this is great that we're able to do it amongst ourselves as API advocates. Is how do we then get beyond our groups, is how are we connecting and educating and letting people know and inviting them in and learning about what we're doing, contributing to what we're doing in different ways, not just necessarily monetary, but also expertise, resources, connection with people who might have access to things we wouldn't normally have, because we don't know an API person in that industry, right? Or in that sector. So I think that it definitely begins with, how do we connect our work, and how do we, because we're so busy doing the work ourselves, it's sometimes hard to connect. And so I think it'd be great if we could have more forums and informing each other what we're doing, so we can share resources, share networks. And I think that, because, you know, Long Beach has a population of over 65,000 APIAs, right? And we lack representation on various levels. And I think that that's where, you know, again, how do we continue to bridge the work in these various industries, sectors, communities, and just being there for each other, protecting each other, and speaking up for each other.
Well, you mentioned representation. I mean, certainly the Cambodian community in Long Beach is taking big steps, right, towards flexing some political power and starting to slowly but surely rewrite some of the boundaries, quite literally, you know, with the city council districts and everything. Ladine, can you share a couple thoughts on the subject?
Yeah, sure. I really appreciate this conversation. At the end of the day, it's really supporting one another and other organizations as well. So I definitely, with the Cambodian community, adults, youth, and all that, I mean, definitely want to see more like education. I know many folks are in the social media platform, either Facebook or Instagram. So having maybe different workshops, different meditation, yoga, really kind of like keeping themselves grounded and all this stuff, but also being educated as well, you know, and making sure city are providing like language. I mean, those languages are being offered and all this stuff, you know. So I think it's important, you know. So, and then we got to be very creative as well. So maybe I'm not sure. Maybe the host like different youth community forum, different maybe some different activities or whatever to keep people the energy lively and all that.
Yeah, there's certainly, I see Nak is literally taking notes as you guys are talking. So I think, so these strategies are going to be implemented, right?
Awesome, awesome.
Tavae, can you share a little bit?
Sure. You asked a really big question. I think you asked, how do we like solve racism or address it?
No.
Can you restate your question? Yeah.
The question that I'm asking is more, how do the different groups, as has been brought up several times, right? The Polynesian experience can be very different from the Cambodian experience, all the different sort of branches of the API family. And the question that Nak had was more, how do we build connectivity between the different advocacy groups that we have in this forum and across the city to sort of help foster a little bit more ability to work collectively on some of those issues? If you figure out how to solve racism, that would be great too, but I'm not going to put that on you specifically.
I lose sleep about that question every night. You know, and I also asked to restate the question because I think when we talk about racism, are there a lot of the examples that are being given, right, are these heinous, overt examples of racism. And when I think about our advocacy work amongst these organizations, a lot of it is about addressing institutional, systemic, and historical racism. Like, we have taken on a very huge problem. And so even as we're asked, you know, how do we work together as organizations, almost every single person on this panel is somebody I already work with. Like, all of us are already in all of the same networks, all the same coalitions, whether, you know, we know who to go to if it's about education in this community, if it's about health in that community, like, I know our go-to around it, right? And I think there's a way in which there's a necessity to be really integrated about it and also be clear about who it is that we're trying to address, that even when these overt instances of racism go away, that our work is still around, right? That this has always been a thing. Anti-Asian racism, like the very first exclusionary immigration policy was the Chinese Exclusion Act, right? Like, this country is built on racism against communities of color. So I don't want to think about it as this brand new instance, and that the necessity for racial solidarity has always needed to be. I laugh also because as you're talking about Nak, like, Nak and I have been kicking it and trying to figure out and fix things and get engaged since we were in 6th grade together at Newcomb Academy. So some of this for me in thinking about youth development in this long term of like, how do we build that pipeline? So not only are we connected, but the next generations are connected. Because I'm really clear that this is legacy work, right? That I get to do it because of Dr. Thomas, that Angela and I were in the most recent Lengafa class with Fayaong Moni. And so I think the connections exist. I think it's about figuring out how to stay in relationship. And most deeply when it comes to young people, that what feels not as abundant is like the number of trusted adults that they have in their life. Because I hear in the question from Nak of like, I am the trusted adult for hundreds of kids, of students. So how can we all also be those adults that they can come to, that they can talk to and still connect with even in social distance?
I think you said that wonderfully, and you make the point, you know, it came up earlier, right, that the health department initially is not going to break out the data on Polynesian, the Polynesian test rates specifically. And they said, you know, I believe the quote was, it's not significant enough, right? And go, well, to your community, it's pretty significant, you know? And as it turns out, when they break that data out, there was a big story there that needed to be told. So you make a good point about, it's not just a question of, as the Anti-Defamation League and other groups are seeing a rise in this outward, as you called it, the heinous event form of racism. That's not the only level of that has to be attacked. I think that's a really great point. Alex, do you want to share a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, I completely agree with what other folks have said. I think we can really learn from our ancestors and the generations that came before us. What we've learned through the civil rights movement is that API organizations formed coalitions and fought back for our civil rights. And pretty much any major progress has been won because different groups work together. I even think about the Filipino farm workers and the Mexican farm workers, like Cesar Chavez, Larry Itliong. Nobody would have thought those groups would have come together in the Delano grape strike, but they did, and they were able to win things. And like we've been saying here, like the Filipino Migrant Center has been in coalition with several organizations here, United Cambodian Community, Khmer Parent Association around the language access campaign, even working with EM3 around health insurance for youth and for families. We have to fight back, but we can only fight back when we're united. And that's really what we've learned from our generations before. So we just got to keep uniting, keep building this allyship and solidarity and just in coalition with each other. We're already doing it, and we're going to keep doing more.
That's great. Frederick?
Yeah, so to answer the question on how to build a bridge, I think it really goes back down to Khmer Alumni Association when I look at it, because the way Khmer Alumni Association is all built up of individuals, right? I'm just an individual representing KA, but I don't speak for everybody that's involved with KA. So what I mean by that is there had to be some type of similarity between all of us in order to build that bridge, in order to create this association. So if we take a look at it from a larger scope, if you want us to build bridges between each other's organization, it's not about what's similar between us anymore. I think it's more about understanding each other's culture and understanding what's different about each other, because the goal is to work together towards this whole xenophobia thing, and we all want that. So in order to move forward, we need to understand what's different, how we work, how our cultures work, and then find a way to move together like that. Back to the topic of the individual, I'm pretty sure everybody has said this, but we all need to be responsible for our actions now, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic. Show a certain level of leadership, especially within yourself and your family, the friends among you. I empower every Khmer alumni out there to just don't worry about trying to save the world. Just focus on what's in front of you right now. If you can focus on that, you develop a certain set of values. And if we all can have a collective set of values and act on that together, we can create a good set of habits. And with these new habits, washing our hands very frequently, hand sanitizer, wearing masks. If us as leaders and organization can all have a collective message that, hey, these are the new core values, these new set of habits, and it's not hard. And there's a lot of improving, because I can say, hey, I can do a better job washing my hands every day. Yeah, I'm not gonna go into detail, but we can certainly do better.
I won't press you for details on that. That's a good point. Chan, can you share a little bit from the KPA perspective?
Yeah, from the KPA perspective, I will echo what Alex mentioned earlier, that we need to build a coalition. We need to come together and, talk to each other what we can do as a coalition to prevent and to answer to all these things that are happening to the community, the Asian community. And also, I would like this coalition need to have a training. How to you respond it? This hatred against Asian exists because some people didn't believe it that exists. And they think, oh yeah, exists for only certain group. Okay, because they label this virus is a China virus only for the Chinese people that will have this treatment from the public. It's not the case, because all Asians look alike. Because we cannot distinguish from Japanese, Vietnamese, Cambodian, Lao, Hmong to Chinese at all, because Asians are similar. And we have to also do the survey to the community who experience this kind of mistreatment from the public when they were in the public setting. Because so far, I received feedback from the senior that right now they are fearful to get out of their house, to go to the market, to go to the grocery store, because they not just verbally mistreated, but they chase them too. They chase after them. And also the family with small children, also because she said, I didn't understand why they targeted me. I didn't do anything. And that's what I explained to them. And I just told them that you need to be aware of your surrounding. When you go outside, you don't go just by yourself, especially with a mother with a small child. You have to be careful. You need to ask some company that will go with you, and then you need to tell somebody that this really happened, because a lot of people don't think it really happened. But what I would like to suggest is to have a training about it, because last week I attended training that put by the collaboration of the American Advancing Justice in LA with a Hollebeck agency, and they train about how you respond as a bystander. And I get a lot of tools. What I remember from the training is a 5D. One is a delay, distract, delegate, direct, and document. So all these 5Ds are very important for us, because like sometimes you don't know what to do when you see it, but you among those 5D, you have something that you can do. You can either document or you can delegate or something like that. Unless you have a tool that help you as a person, that you can help others when something happen in front of you. And from that, and I echo again for all the panelists, as a coalition. When we have a coalition, we have a strong voice. When we have a strong voice, we have a strength. When we move together, we can make it happen. That's what my suggestion for that.
I think I'm seeing in the chat, Chan, thank you for sharing that. We're going to be able to help post the points from the training that you've mentioned, so that people who maybe did not tune in for the live chat can have that resource. I think that's obviously very, very important as we're talking about what we're going through right now as a city and a country. Moni, can you share a little bit?
Thank you for the opportunity. I want to echo what Tavae said. And thank you so much, Mei Li, for reporting and expressing and depicting the horrific racism that's happening all over the country with our demographics, with our API community especially. But for me as a Pacific Islander, although I have experienced racism and have been treated and mistreated and called certain things throughout my life growing up, what was most impactful, whether it was positive or negative, to me as a Pacific Islander in the API community, was the institutional racism, was the systemic and historic racism. I remember coming from Samoa, going to my elementary school here, and looking on the wall, there was a great map, and I was looking all over for where I came from. And with my teacher and I looking throughout this ginormous map on the wall, I saw that Samoa wasn't even on it. And it struck me that many kids my age were going to school, learning about a world where people like me did not exist. And that did something to me and stuck with me throughout the years. I am a proud resident of the 1st District of Long Beach. Long Beach is home to my family, but Long Beach has a really, really dark and intertwined history with my family. My older brother, Koi, was shot and killed in Long Beach by a drive-by shooting. My mother, 1994, was shot by a stray bullet on the east side of Long Beach by a drive-by shooting. My father, who is now wheelchair bound and has been for years, was also shot by a drive-by shooting, being in the wrong place at the wrong time on the east side of Long Beach. This is the reality that I'm facing, but you know what I remember was that all the police officers, all of the EMTs and investigators, they did not look like me. And all the while, this happened while there was a substation 500 feet from my house, a police station. And if you go to the police station now off of Santa Fe and PCH, it's probably closed. Even without COVID-19, I tried many times and I was met with locked doors. But you see hundreds of cop cars parked there on a daily. And I'm not saying that they are bad, but I'm just saying that this is the reality that we're facing. But I do agree with, Alex, when he said we should learn from our ancestors. And one of the things that Gafa tries to do is to remind our people that our ancestors went through similar trials and struggles before. And so, for example, we talk about racism. A lot of our people here who were born and raised in the United States do not really grasp the reality of what our ancestors went through. And so there was a time that people who looked like me and who had our color skin of the people on this panel, you were not allowed to go to school in our islands. You were not allowed to go to school unless you had a European last name. You were not allowed to choose who to marry. You were not allowed to work. You were not allowed to use certain restrooms. This happened in our own land by occupation through the colonizers, through the Europeans, and yes, the United States. This is the dark history that they don't teach us in class. And when our people here understand the dark history and understand that this is what our ancestors went through, they have a greater appreciation of the civil rights movement here. They have a greater appreciation of the struggles of equality here in the United States and the environment and in the space that they find themselves in today. Another example is we're in COVID-19. Talk about social distancing and, staying home. In 1918, there was the Spanish flu. Of course, that was the name that they gave them, gave the epidemic. And the Spanish flu killed over 50 million people around the world. Now, because of colonization, our islands in Samoa were separated into two sides. Germany took the left, New Zealand took the left. The United States colonized and made the Eastern Islands a territory. So you have two separate sides of Samoa under two separate different governments. The Western Islands under New Zealand and Germany decided to open their ports and trade and bring in ships and open their borders, where America and the United States US territorial side of Samoa decided to close their borders and social distance themselves from the world. Well, what happened was in the Western Islands, they lost about 40% of their population, whereas the United States controlled islands, the US territorial side of American Samoa, lost no lives. Now, it's sad because we're interconnected with our brothers and sisters and cousins on the other side, but that shows you a difference between approaches when coming and facing a pandemic like COVID-19. And so learning about this stuff in history and what our ancestors went through helps us to accept and trying to cope with how we should be responsible to ourselves and be responsible to others. And so, this draws a line through, the racism that we see every day and the racism that we see on the news that's reported, but the racism that's also in our institutions, in schools where there's no maps with my island on it, or a police station that has no representations of APIs, specifically Polynesians. And like our amazing moderator here, he said it perfectly. Polynesian experiences and Asian experiences are two different things. And yes, it's important for us to correlate and to advocate with each other, but I also think that we need to recognize our differences and make sure that we are treated fairly in this space. Make sure that both Asians and Pacific Islanders are allocated resources, according to their needs, allocated resources and fundings and whatnot, equally and equitably across the board. So thank you.
A lot of really good points. I just want to make a quick note. We are going to be wrapping up in just a couple minutes here. I know we're a little bit over time, but we've obviously got so many great perspectives and panelists here that we want to make sure that we're hearing from everybody. So Dr. Thompson, can you speak on this subject a little bit? I think we might have lost Dr. Thompson. I'm not seeing him. Susana, do you have a couple of thoughts you can share here?
Definitely. So I just wanted to echo what folks are saying in terms of the importance of being able to share our story and really being able to put the API lens on what's happening in our community. So thank you, Long Beach API and everybody who is on the panelists to really help us bring that forward and share our stories, and the importance of being visible. And so census work is so important to us because we want to be counted, we want to be visible. And with that census, we're able to build more representation for us. And so that's another piece that I've been hearing from the panelists is the importance of representation of folks that are from our communities at leadership decision levels that are making decisions for our communities. The other piece that I think is really important to highlight is ownership. A lot of our community members are renters. 75% of Cambodian residents in Long Beach are renters. A lot of our community members have small businesses and own small businesses, but they don't own the actual property that their small businesses are at. And there's always an opportunity of being pushed out if we're not taking ownership of the neighborhoods that we're in and being able to represent our communities as renters and homeowners and property owners in the city of Long Beach. So that's one big piece that I think has really been missing from this conversation is that, yes, we've all are united around health and being able to push for mental health and education, but it's really important around economic inclusion, that our community is at the table also, that we are being able to create a stake in the economy to show how important it is immigrant and refugee communities are to the livelihood and the economy of the city of Long Beach. So I think it's really important that we continue to keep our and really invest in our cultural keepers. So that could be grocery stores, but it also could be temples. And a lot of these cultural spaces are at risk of being lost during this time because of the economic downturn that's happening around COVID-19. So just really want to emphasize the need to support our small businesses, having them at the table so that we can continue to have these culture keepers that are so important to our communities to continue to thrive and contribute back and really enrich the broader society, the broader city of Long Beach.
Well, I think that was a really wonderful series of perspectives, and I appreciate everyone for taking the time to join us. Sorry we ran a little bit long here. Hopefully NOC is not going to fire me before tomorrow when Long Beach API is hosting another live stream. This one will be at 5 p.m. With API educators. I think we heard almost every panelist touch on education and the effects that the school shutdowns have had on the different communities here in the city. So please come back tomorrow at 5 p.m. But thank you so much to all our API advocates here in the city of Long Beach. And thank you so much to Mei Lee for joining us and talking about her work as well. And thanks for tuning in. It was a really great time for me hearing from everyone. And we hope to see you guys back here on the Long Beach API Facebook Wednesday evening at 5 p.m. Thanks.